Good morning. It is such a joy to be here with you. It's so good to see familiar faces and fellow Alaskans like Jordan and David and Eric and Trisha and Rebecca and Kinley. It's so good to have you guys here. It's good to play hacky sack with some people after class the other day. That was pretty fun. And it's good to, in some ways, come home and be back here. Some new faces, and that's also encouraging to see more people jumping into the work of going out into the world, making disciples, and preaching the word to the world. So I'm here this morning. I got asked to talk about what's going on in Alaska, and I'm thrilled to share what's been going on, as well as some open doors for some of you to potentially walk through. So in case you don't know, my name's Mike, and my wife Annie is back up in Alaska. It's where we live, and we have two kids, Unity and Miles, and Annie and I both went through AIM. I went to South Africa in 2007. Annie went to Mexico in 2008. And I went through Sunset and graduated in 2013. Annie went to Texas Tech. And in 2014, both of us moved up to Alaska to be missionaries, and we've been working there ever since. So I don't know what you know about Alaska. I don't know what stereotypical ideas you might have in your mind about things up there, whether we all live in igloos, maybe different shows you've seen about Alaska. There's some nuggets of truth in all those shows, but most of that's kind of over-dramatized and stretched pretty far. So I want to talk a little bit about just what living in Alaska is like for us, and then I want to talk about our work there and what we've been a part of. So I like to describe Alaska as a wild first world, where we have Walmart, Amazon ships up there, but we have this interaction with nature that I've never experienced anywhere else, where if you took one step off the road, really any road in Alaska, you're probably the first human to have ever stood there since God made this planet. And so it's pretty neat to have that type of interaction with nature and in just the state of Alaska in that way. Alaska is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. The landscapes, the mountains, the northern lights, just different hiking trails, and being this really unprecedented beauty in nature. Moose and bears, it's just off the charts of anywhere I've ever been. And something else unique about Alaska is the amount of daylight variation depending on the season. This is a time lapse of the summer night where the sun doesn't really ever set. One of the names for Alaska is the land of the midnight sun, because for several months you won't see stars because the sun is just doing circles in the sky. And so it's a lot of fun during the summers because you just have like this unlimited daylight essentially, so you're always out running around and just seeming you have a lot more energy. The winter, in contrast, you have about 4 hours of daylight as the sun comes up at 10, goes down at 2, and that radical shift of daylight can affect the people of Alaska in some interesting ways. It's called a seasonal affective disorder, where if you're not prepared or understanding or used to that change of daylight and just living in extra darkness, especially during that winter time, it can actually affect your emotional health. And so Alaskans, people that move up to Alaska, there's an increased chance that they're going to wrestle with depression than if they were living in other places. Alaska also has one of the highest per capita alcohol use and substance abuse, twice that of the national average. And in conjunction to that, Alaska has the highest suicide rate in the nation, twice that of the national average. And so we're really praying for people who know the Lord and want to share the Lord with people, because people there are really in need of some hope in that area. A lot of people that live in Alaska are first-generation residents there, where people are immigrating and moving from all over the United States and also the world to Alaska for either an adventure or a job opportunity or some other purpose. And in doing so, they're leaving behind their people. They're leaving behind their families, and they're going there isolated. And that's a recipe for a pretty dark situation spiritually, and which is such an important thing for us as the church to be a light to the world. The darker an area is, the brighter light stands out. And so Alaska, though physically dark during the winter, it's also spiritually dark in a lot of ways, which is why the church stands out so much. When people are looking for family, we have a Father, and we have brothers and sisters. When people are looking for community, we have the church. When they're looking for answers, there's truth. And so the church, being the light to the world, is so essential. I'm very there. It shines brightly in Alaska, and we're excited to be a part of it. So things I want to share, too, about Alaska is that it's relatively a new state. It only became a state in 1959. The culture inside of it hasn't solidified. There's no, this is how we've always done it, because people have usually only been there for a few years. So many people moved up to Alaska that I'm originally from Alaska. When I was a kid in this area we live is called the Matsu Valley, there was about 20,000 people that lived there when I was a kid. When I graduated high school, there were 60,000 people that lived there. And then when I moved back in 2014, there's now 120,000 people there. So this just really expanded, and people are moving from all over. Alaska is pretty far away. It's part of the United States, but from here, it's roughly 4,000 miles away, and the military even considers being stationed in Alaska like a foreign station because it is so far removed. So it's part of the United States, but it is so far away, it's quite different. I can't come up with a term for it exactly. I talked with the AIM students about this, that, is it a foreign mission? Is it domestic missions? Because it's right in the middle, so I'm trying to come up with a good word for it, so maybe y'all can help me with domestic, Doran, or fomestic, Doran, trying to combine, domestic and foreign fields. So Alaska's in this weird middle ground, kind of right in the fence of being a different country, but still part of the United States. And so it's a unique scenario. So our template for our mission work there, the preparations we did going back to Alaska, we were really inspired by Nehemiah. When Annie and I were here and I was going through school here and going through the advanced mission school, we were praying a lot about what the next chapter of life was going to look like. And being from Alaska and looking from afar and seeing the condition and the opportunities in Alaska, we saw a lot of parallels between Nehemiah and the situation we were in, where we were in a position where we could gather resources, and I could go back and help the church in Alaska be the church Jesus called us to be and to follow the design he set for us. So we prayed a lot of things, we planned things, and then we've gone back to help restore and to build things we see Jesus designed them to be. And like Nehemiah, when he, after praying and gathering resources, went back to Jerusalem, we see that he took time to firsthand go at night and to walk around the walls and to inspect things, to see strength and to see parts of the wall that were great, and to also recognize holes in the wall and things that needed to be repaired. So for a year, I traveled around Alaska and wanted to gather information about what are some strengths in Alaska and what are some areas for improvement. I didn't want to come in guns blazing and just having the answers to everything. This is what we all need to be doing. I wanted to see for myself the strengths and weaknesses of the culture and of the church there. And from that, we learned some really, really interesting things. We've been able to make a lot of great progress. One of the things we saw so powerfully awesome about Alaska is the unity amongst the Christians there, that there's 17 churches of Christ, and they're all unified. They're all in fellowship with each other. We work well together. We do a lot of things together. And the peace amongst people, the peace amongst God's people is so impacting, so important. Matthew 5:9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." So when people are actively looking to make peace, they join the family business of our Father. Christ is the Prince of Peace, and when we're willing to try to make peace, to build bridges with people, we are sons of God. James 3:18 says, "A harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." And also Acts 9:31, one of my favorite verses, says, "The church throughout all of Judea and Galilee and Samaria had peace and was being built up and was walking in the fear of the Lord, and in the comfort of the Holy Spirit, it multiplied." I've heard often and was told often how the church grows through persecution, and that tends to also be true, but this shows that during times of peace and of unity, the church can multiply and grow, and that's what we're seeing taking place in Alaska, where the Christians we're unified together, and from that foundation of unity, we're seeing this growth. If you're inviting people to come over for dinner with your family, but you're at each other's throats, it's not going to be a very good time. So the things that we're inviting the world into, we need to be people of love, people of peace, people of unity, and we're seeing it take place. So much so, this is such an important conviction of ours. Psalm 133 talks about how beautiful it is when brothers dwell in unity. We're seeing the effect of unity in Alaska, and so much so, this is my daughter, and we named her Unity because when the church wanted to throw us a baby shower for her, and before she was born, and we didn't know her name yet, but what inspired us to name her this is we saw Christians getting unified by her to bless us. They were wanting to serve us and encourage us and provide for us. And so this little child who wasn't even born yet is causing people to get closer to God and closer to each other. And we were like, we want her to cause that for the rest of her life. We want to name her Unity. And also that's something we want for ourselves, that every day we would help be used by God to help people be closer to God and closer to each other, because it's how God wants things to be. So Nehemiah 12:43, kind of the end result of this unity of God's city, God's church being the way he has designed it to be. I see a lot of parallels with Nehemiah 12:43. The work's been complete, the city's been restored, and they offered great sacrifices that day and rejoiced, for God had made them rejoice with great joy. The women and the children also rejoiced, and the joy of Jerusalem was heard far away. That last bit there really resonates with me, that this doesn't just affect what's going on in here, but it radiates out and the world hears something. I mean, this world, especially right now, it just seems like people seem so hopeless, whether it's COVID or political unrest or financial instability. There's a lot of people just like looking for some stability, looking for some answers, looking for some safety, and they should look to the church and see there's something different going on over there, and that there's some peace, there's some unity, there's some hope, there's some love that doesn't come from this world. And so the joy being heard far away is something that should be happening with the church. And we're seeing it take place in Alaska, and I think it's pretty exciting. So it's been a fruitful work so far of us trying to unify the congregations. We've been really intentionally trying to invest in youth and young adults in Alaska. I have a mentor of mine, Lauren Hollingsworth, and he's in his 80s. He's been a missionary in Thailand for over 40 years, and he spends half the year in Alaska now and half in Thailand. And I asked him if there was something he could have done differently in Thailand, what would it have been? Because he had a very successful ministry over there and still does. He said, I wish I would have invested more in the youth. And so we took that to heart into making that a priority for us in Alaska, and that's been very fruitful. We've been really focusing on helping leaders be connected, preachers being connected, that congregations should be autonomous but aware of each other, and that people aren't just off in the deep end by themselves, and kind of who guards the guardians, making sure that preachers in particular have camaraderie amongst each other. I call it the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Again, I need to come up with a new name. So we're also looking to establish healthy leadership, trying to help elders be developed in different locations, as well as training up more preachers. And then we're trying to make sure that we're intentionally pursuing truth. We don't have this all figured out. We're trying to still learn more about Christ and make him known, and we have not arrived yet. And from all that, that's becoming a loving presence in the community, and we're seeing that take place. The people are really the reward of all of this. This is what's so exciting, is being able to connect to the people God has made available to us, and the church being together. And again, that's what we're inviting the world into, and it's the right place to be. So this map might not mean a whole lot to you, but it means a ton to me. This is different locations of where there's congregations in Alaska, the Churches of Christ, and also just the different conditions of leadership in these locations. And one of the reasons I'm really excited to talk to you is about your potential involvement in this map and trying to recruit more preachers and leaders and servants to come and join this work. We live in Wasilla, which is in this area right here, and but where these red triangles are are locations where there's Christians that are gathering together. They have a building, but they have no full-time leadership. And that's one of the holes in the wall, if you will, is where and our AIM students with me have traveled to all but one of these locations. And one of the things we see is I can't be everywhere at once, and it's a blessing to be connected and to be unified with them, but they need someone consistently more equipping them for good work and doing the work of an evangelist with and building up these saints for good works. And so that's an opportunity for some of you to participate in, to pray about, to perhaps come up to Alaska and join the work that's going on up here. I've been really inspired by firefighters over the years, and I have a friend who's a firefighter, and he would talk about how everyone's running out of the building and we're running in. And that attitude of, here am I, send me, let's go. I think of Jude 23, of saving others by snatching them out of the fire. And Alaska is a kind of a crazy place. It's a long ways away. It's pretty dark. It can get cold occasionally during the winter. And it's a little bit more expensive to live there. And it takes no small amount of guts to leave everything behind and go somewhere, not just Alaska. And these, what you're looking at here, they're called smoke jumpers. They're firefighters that parachute into forests to help fight forest fires. And I was just so inspired by just the amount of guts it takes to do something like that. To say, here am I, send me, that takes guts. And I think faith is a fancy way of saying guts. You look at those who walk by faith, you look at Hebrews 11, and it takes trust in God to go out and to do something that doesn't necessarily feel very safe in the moment. And so I want to encourage, no matter where you end up going for when you complete your time here, that you do something in faith, that you go with guts, not looking for something comfortable, not looking for something that just has the salary or the position or the logistics that you would like to have security in, but rather you go where you can be fruitful and you go where you can be faithful and you have a here am I, send me attitude. We've had AIM students in Alaska for the last several years. We've had 16 AIM students. This is the current team, and I introduced you to them a few days ago. And having AIM students with us has been really exciting, very fruitful. And if you were to join the work in Alaska, you would at some form or fashion overlap with them and be a part of the work as well. So Alaska is calling. I must go, and some of y'all are coming with me. Some of us are driving back to Alaska right now. It's going to take like 10 days. And we're going to load up in the car and head back. We came down here to buy a car and to talk to y'all. And so we are accomplishing both those tasks and about to head back to the motherland. And so we're going to Alaska, and I would love to answer any questions you have about the work there. Please feel free to text me or call me, and I'll hang out a little bit after we get done being together this morning. There's so much more to talk about, and this is just what's going on in Alaska. Our God is so much more active than we even recognize, not just in Alaska, but all over the whole world. And so I'm thrilled that God has brought you here, and I'm also even more thrilled to see where he continues and involved within us in ways we don't even totally understand, and that's good. So I love you all. Pray for Alaska, pray for me, and hopefully to some capacity we'll see you in the future. I should mention that we have 2 different internships for Alaska for those of you who are completing your time here or even in the middle of your time here in the Bible school. And that is, we have a summer internship where you come up and work with us for about 3 months approximately. And we have a circuit for you to travel amongst these places that don't have any preachers, also to travel to places where there are preachers, and for you to see if there's some open doors for you to connect there. We also have a year-long internship, which is kind of the same format, but it's over a year. And that's a time for you to see if Alaska would be a good fit for you, because it is far away, it is a different pace of life. But if it's something you're interested in, please contact me and pray about it. And I'm so thankful for how God uses this place, and I'm excited already to come back sometime, but it's time for me to go. So love you all, and I'll see you all later.